Right. They also claim that they landed on the moon, which was 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and that they had an air conditioner in the lunar module, which is powered by what were basically car batteries, and that a bank of car batteries powered air conditioning to compete with 250 degrees outside for as long as 3 days and got it down to 72 degrees. 72 is pretty arrogant. You know, try going out to the desert, turning off your car engine and turning on, the AC and see how long it's powered off of your battery.
Sure.
See if it even gets down from 110 to 72 on the inside. There's a whole lot of technological claims that are fabricated. In fact, not only was all of the original TV footage lost a couple of years ago, that made the news because Ron Howard was about to transfer it to IMAX, and right before he did it, they lost all of the original TV footage.
Yes.
And secondly, they lost all of the technical specifications of the entire rocket. The lunar module, the command module, and all that is not available. They say it's not classified, but it's not available. You can't even technically prove that the bank of car batteries, you know what I mean, based on the amperage or something like that, because all that information has been withdrawn and it's not available.
Okay, let's keep going. There's so many questions, Bart. Okay, here's another one for you. Many people think that it would be very easy to verify if we went to the moon, especially folks who use Google aerial maps, where you can look at your own home very easily and in almost high res or a certain street. If we could verify through photos that all the stuff that was left on the moon, for instance, the rovers and a bunch of stuff that we left there. What do you think about that?
Well, the problem is that the people who own that technology, in order to see whether there are any artifacts left on the moon, are also the same people who faked it. So according to NASA, the official statement is that the Hubble telescope is too powerful to focus on the surface of the moon. But a friend of mine bumped into one of the Hubble scientists, and they said they could absolutely see footprints on the moon. They've just never been given that assignment. And so even though they have this capability of proving if there were a flag there and if there were blueprints there, they would definitely prove it by taking a high-res picture from one of these satellites or telescopes, but they've never done it because there's nothing there. And that's what they would have to admit to the public.
Well, I guess you also
They're still lying. See, the problem is if it comes out, let's just say it came out.
Okay.
Let's just say tomorrow morning, day after Christmas, we're watching Good Morning America or whatever's on, and Neil Armstrong is on the air, and he's weeping, and he's admitting that the moon landings were fake. He admits that all the elected officials, right, 100 senators and 300 or so congressmen were lied to, and they're on the Intelligence Committee. But the public was lied to. They embezzled $30 billion. Don't you think there might be some reform that the public might want in the government?
I don't know. It's very hard these days, Bart, because like I said, we come from a generation now, which is why people are more open-minded, I would think, to what you're talking about here, where people don't believe anything anymore. The corruption is so rampant. So I guess he gets caught in the minutia sometimes, where it's like, yeah, the moon landing was fake. Yeah, okay, sure. So,
well, it's not in the encyclopedia. I mean,
right.
Pull out the encyclopedia and you look up the moon, it says we landed on the moon.
Correct.
Now, if at some point, someday in the future, it says it was a government fraud to fool the Soviets and all this or that, then it's an established fact. We'll see what happens. But the fact is, I showed this newly discovered footage to an NBC news director. Okay. The footage, and a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. The footage that has been licensed 5 times from BBC, NBC, Discovery Channel, History Channel, and all these people who refused to air it after they paid for it. Someone's making a call to somebody. We have footage of them faking the moon. I showed it to a news director at NBC. He said, this proves we didn't go to the moon, and I cannot air it in good conscience. It will cause a civil war.
How did you get this footage?
Well, it was mislabeled, I believe, unless someone deliberately sent it to us, which is a possibility, that Bill Casey always said. What was on the label and on the tape were two different things. Most reporters were satisfied with the first few tapes, given by NASA's media department to do a story on the moon landing or the anniversary. But I was thinking maybe they faked it, and so I asked for absolutely everything from the first moon mission. Everything, print, media, film, and video, and I got like 30 tapes, and they're all like the same thing over and over and over again. There really weren't any unedited shots.
Okay.
I really stopped looking at them I was looking for one last shot to finish up the film, so I had to meticulously go through all the footage. I pop in a tape that says on the screen, "Do not show to the public," and it's the only unedited footage. I hit fast forward, and I'm seeing the shot of allegedly the Earth in space for an hour. And I'm like, what is this? So I rewind it. I start from the top. You hear Houston controls say, "Hey, Apollo 11, the TV picture looks great." There's dead air for exactly 4 seconds. Then we hear someone say, "Talk." And then Neil Armstrong speaks. Now, when a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, I said they were preoccupied. They were reminding them to pay attention to this shot that they were actually taking themselves from Earth orbit. I realized that what they were doing is they were supposed to be halfway to the moon, 100,000 miles away. Through the old computer in the distance, it would have taken 2 seconds to get to them, 2 seconds to get back. And so someone at the CIA was counting off on a stopwatch 4 seconds. So even though they heard the question instantaneously, if they responded immediately, it would give away that they were in Earth orbit and not halfway to the moon, because the radio signal should take longer to go there and come back.
It's sounding a little. That's sounding a little complicated. I might need you to
you can cue it up. I mean, it's on a funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
Okay.
They're asked questions. You hear the EQ of the audio of Houston. You hear Houston say, "Hey, the TV picture looks great." Then there's 4 seconds of dead air. You hear a different EQ of someone else say, "Talk." They're really clear. They're on top of the microphone. Then you hear the third party, which is the astronauts, respond. So you have 3 parties on this audio track. You've got NASA, you've got the astronauts, and you've got this third party.
I get your point. I think that you have to really think about that one, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. But what I want to do when we come back is get into the astronauts. You've met plenty of them, and the human mind is sometimes where we find the answers we seek. Back with Bart Sabrell after the break. This is Ufonaut Radio on KPM 860.
9 to 10 every Saturday night. Ufonaut Radio with Jesse Randolph on KPM 860.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
Back now with Bart Sabrell, my guest, filmmaker and researcher of the moon hoax conspiracy. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. If you haven't seen this film, please go see it. I was watching it with my kid the other day, and I'll tell you this, Bart, and I hope you're impressed by this. This is a younger generation. This boy is in a speech class in high school out here in Portland, Oregon, and he is going to do a speech coming up in a few weeks about how we never went to the moon because of your film.
Well, I hope he does well. I was, occasionally I'm asked to speak and paid a fee to speak on whether the moon landings are real or not. A college, I don't want to say their name, but a pretty well-known university in America, had a contract and had me set up to, pay a fairly good fee to speak on the subject. And then word got out what the subject was going to be about, and they banned it.
Well, here's the interesting part that you mentioned that.
It's inappropriate for a college.
Well, that's
saying the landing was fake.
Well, this is interesting because he came back and told me that his speech teacher wouldn't allow visuals. All of a sudden, he's not allowed visuals. I mean, come on. All right, we don't have a lot of time. I need to ask you some very important questions here because you're not just someone who stays behind the camera. You get out there and you get in people's faces, Bart, and everybody knows the infamous story and they've seen the video of you approaching Buzz. But how many Apollo astronauts have you physically met with? And why have they been so violent towards you?
Well, in Astronauts Gone Wild, I think we meet 8 of them, I believe. I'm guessing something like that. And it's like I'm walking up to their entourage where their wife is present and saying, "How is your mistress?"
Right.
The fact is, if I walked on the moon and someone else thought otherwise, I would find that hysterically funny. And if someone asked me to swear in a Bible that I walked on the moon, I'd say, "Sure, I swore in a Bible. I swear a stack of Bibles. Do you need anything else? You feeling okay?" But they get very angry, like I'm exposing their adultery in front of their spouse. That's how they respond.
It seems that way.
Astronauts Gone Wild, and you've seen Astronauts Gone Wild, we have an on-camera admission by Buzz Aldrin that I am correct. He says, thinking the camera was turned off, and this makes you a real famous person for having discovered all this. what an ego you must have to want to propel your career like this. How could I become famous if I was wrong? As far as he knew, when we hooked up the monitor and showed the footage that then a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, fake footage that he shot, he thought the story had broken worldwide at that moment. We have 2 big video cameras and lights in front of him. He thought we had exposed them. And he said, he just said, well, this makes you famous for having discovered this. Now, how could I be famous if I were wrong?
Questions, Bart. Okay, here's another one for you. Many people think that it would be very easy to verify if we went to the moon, especially folks who use Google aerial maps, where you can look at your own home very easily and in almost high res, or a certain street, if we could verify through photos that all the stuff that was left on the moon, for instance, the rovers and a bunch of stuff.
That's right. They also claim that they landed on the moon, turning off your car engine and turning on, the AC and see how long it's powered off of your battery.
Sure.
See if it even gets down from 110 to 72 on the inside. There's a whole lot of technological claims that are fabricated. In fact, not only was all of the original TV footage lost a couple of years ago, that made the news because Ron Howard was about to transfer it to IMAX, and right before he did it, they lost all of the original TV footage.
Yes.
And secondly, they lost all of the technical specifications of the entire rocket. The lunar module, the command module, and all that is not available. They say it's not classified, but it's not available. You can't even technically prove that the bank of car batteries, based on the amperage or something like that, because all that information has been withdrawn and it's not available.
Okay, let's keep going. There's so many.
It was 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and that they had an air conditioner in the lunar module, which is powered by what were basically car batteries, and that a bank of car batteries powered air conditioning to compete with 250 degrees outside for as long as 3 days, and got it down to 72 degrees. 72 is pretty arrogant. Try going out to the desert